Good evening and welcome to tonight's virtual bond town hall. This meeting is being audio streamed live on channel 28 and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. Please check the district website for replay times. This meeting is also being streamed live on our PPS TV services website. This November, voters may be asked to consider a 2020 school bond renewal that would maintain the current tax rate and continue investments in our schools. The PPS Board of Education has proposed 3 options for a 2020 bond renewal at the current tax rate and is seeking community input on these options through July 3rd. We're excited to welcome you and others in our community to provide a space for feedback, share in our collective discoveries, and explore the questions that matter for the future of our city's public school infrastructure. Your insight will provide ample opinion to the PPS Board of Education as we consider a bond package referral to voters in November. Tonight's town hall will include 3 30-minute breakout sessions during which participants will be able to enter virtual rooms that will cover educational investments, health and safety projects, modernizations and rebuilds, and bond options. At 6:30, you'll be asked to connect to your first breakout session. We encourage you to visit the room and topic you previously RSVP'd to. If you do not remember, feel free to pick one of the 4 options. Links will be shared closer to 6:30 p.m. Please know that these sessions will be recorded and available for public viewing after tonight's event. You're welcome to stay in this one session for the entirety of the 30 minutes or jump between rooms. We kindly ask that if you do jump between rooms that you quietly enter the conversation, most likely already in progress. Before we transition to a presentation by Dan Young, Chief Operating Officer, and Danny Ledesma, Senior Advisor on Racial Equity and Social Justice on the 2020 bond renewal, we will start this evening by grounding today's conversation. At Portland Public Schools, we know that in order to address pernicious opportunity gaps, we have to be explicit about race. We also know that we must be aware of our history, past and present, so we can be intentional to not embed oppression into our culture and our classrooms. Our history of inadequately serving Black and Native American and many students of color does not reflect the type of community we aspire to be. Instead, we strive to be a community that expresses the fundamental right to human dignity for every person and every student, especially in our plans and in our actions. We also know and believe that by generating an equitable world, we must build an educational system that identifies and ends all means of oppression. Portland Public Schools recognizes that racist violence, both physical, emotional, and systemic, are daily injustices for Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our community. Racism, institutional, cultural, and individual, continues to impact all of our lives on a daily basis, and as a result, we must, 1, constantly recognize and respect Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous people and their traditional territories. And 2, we must also continue to say the names of victims lost to racist violence, bringing light and demanding racial justice today and every day. To provide this land acknowledgement and to say their names, I'd like to introduce Danny Ledesma, Senior Advisor on Racial Equity and Social Justice, and Claire Hertz, our Deputy Superintendent of Business and Operations.
Good evening. My name is Danny Ledesma, and I'm Latina and from the Hickory Band of the Apaches, and Multnomah County and Portland have been my home for 18 years. I'm proud that our community strives to strengthen our relationships with the Native community and Native nations. A symbol of this commitment is a land acknowledgement. These statements bring visibility to the First Peoples of our collective home. This statement is meant to provide information and context while also encouraging all of us to reflect on our current day relationship with Native people and Native experiences. We acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional land of the Chinook, Clackamas, Kalapuya, Multnomah, Wasco, Cathlamet, Tualatin, and Molalla. We also know that many other tribes made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. We honor their history and acknowledge the sacrifices they made. Let us also acknowledge the robust, present-day, federally recognized tribes of this area, the Grand Ronde, Siletz, and Cowlitz. In addition, I would like to acknowledge the Chinook Nation, who has been seeking federal recognition for many years. The urban Indian community is made up of a tribal diversity that originates from around the country, representing 400 tribes. The urban Indian community has a vivid history made up of people whose journeys have brought them to Portland by ways of forced displacement or seeking more opportunities. Today, these tribes and communities celebrate our heritage, showing resilience and tenacity that would be greatly admired by our ancestors. We encourage every person to reflect on their own history, understand the history of colonization and genocide, and support Indigenous sovereignty, priorities, and actions. This acknowledgement is one step that we can take to improve our support of Indigenous communities in this area.
Claire, you're muted.
Okay, Superintendent Hertz?
Okay, is that better? Now
Yes.
can you,
Yes,
okay,
we can.
my apologies. We also say their names. We would also like to start this evening by saying and remembering the names of Black lives that have been lost to racist violence in this country. George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, T.T. Gully, Michael Brown, Stephon Clark, Sandra Bland, Kendra James, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Funnies Hayes, Eric Garner, Deontay Keller, Keaton Otis, Jason Washington, Patrick Kimmons. Here at Portland Public Schools, we know and demand that we continue our steadfast, strong, and united commitment towards making it absolutely clear in our words and actions that Black lives matter. We remember these names and so many other Black people here in Portland and across the country who are no longer with us physically. These names serve as a reminder that we must do our part to create the equitable conditions we need so that every Black person in our community is seen, heard, and supported. We stand in solidarity with Black communities here in Portland and across this country who once again finds itself heartbroken, angered, and we are compelled to act in response to the continued murder of Black people across the U.S. As a school system, we are committed to living into our commitment to racial equity and social justice, one that centers our Black and Native American students. We are committed to calling out and eradicating systems of oppression and correcting the wrongs of our country's racial sin, which stem back to the founding of these United States. We are ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with our Black community who continue to be central to building this nation and who have fought and continue to fight for a more just and equitable opportunity here in Portland and across the United States. Within PPS, we will learn and partner with our Black elders and listen to our young people to address the wrongs that originated 153 years ago when the Portland Public Schools Board of Education denied access to one of two Portland public elementary schools to William Brown's children, becoming the first known recorded case of racism against Black children in the Portland Public Schools. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, let us live up to these three important words: Black lives matter. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dan Young, Chief Operating Officer, and Danny Ledesma, Senior Advisor for Racial Equity.
Thank you, Claire. And we want to express our welcome again to everyone for joining us here tonight. I believe everyone can see our slideshow that we're starting. And thank you to the very fabulous Roseanne Pell, who's helping us with this slideshow tonight. But we are here because we are here to discuss our future, and we want to make sure that folks know that that at our town hall that this meeting is going to be recorded and also made to the public. If we could move to the next slide, please. That this will be made to the public for future reference. We're here to talk today about how we can, through the use of a tool of a bond, create flexible and future-focused environments. And I want to just return back to the agenda for tonight and let you know that we are going to do some framing. So if we can go to the next slide. We're going to do some framing at the top here. We're going to go into breakout rooms where we can have some more in-depth conversations with you all that'll be facilitated by members of our teams. And then we'll have a closing. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So let's start with the framing. We are here today at PPS, and we're excited about the future of PPS because we've had an opportunity over the last year to really be anchored in our vision. And so if we go to the next slide, we had the opportunity to engage with our community in a deep and meaningful way to chart our North Star. And we were able to, over the course of 18 months, collect over 12 to 16,000 different pieces of information. We really engaged with our community to ask the question, what is it that we want for our students into the future? And as part of our and what came out of that that engagement process is our vision, which is PPS Reimagined, where we were able to articulate our core values, a graduate portrait that is not only clear, but really an ambitious ideal of what we really want our students to be able to know, to be, and be able to do so that they are able to thrive into the future. But also included in our graduate portrait were the essentials that we want every adult, every educator to be able to support our graduate profile. We also identified system shifts that we're going to need to be able to create the conditions so that our system is optimized and being able to help realize the graduate profile for every student. So if we go to our next slide, our Chief of Operations, Dan Young, is going to talk about sort of how a bond program can help us realize our vision.
Yeah, thank you, Danny, and good evening. So what a capital bond allows us to do is realize our vision and our goals through the built environment by allocating significant capital funds to our sites and to our portfolio, which includes over 100 sites, over 250 buildings, and over 9 million square feet. We do this by focusing on a few categories of work. One is educational improvements, which includes critical technology and curriculum improvements. Our health and safety projects, what those do is allow us to do important and critical work like fixing our leaking roofs, our broken mechanical systems, but also doing upgrades to systems like fire alarms and our security. And then our modernizations and rebuilds where we are fully updating and retrofitting our school buildings. Next slide, please.
So as we embark upon this journey to think about our bond program, we're really guided by three key principles. The first being racial equity and social justice. At PPS, we want to make sure that our value of racial equity and social justice is something that's not just that we talk about, but that is embedded into all that we do, and that it's not just seen as something that happens in one place or over there, or that's something that is physical or theoretical, but that it's embedded throughout our entire system. And so as we think about our approach of targeted universalism, where we're really trying to center our work around our experiences in communities that have experienced the most barriers, we believe that if we focus there, that will help us by building a system that will eventually be able to serve every student. and our focus is on our Black and our Native students. And so we want to make sure that as we think about applying our approach of targeted universalism and our racial equity and social justice value to the bond, that we're really thinking about a set of upgrades, a set of physical improvements that can strengthen our buildings in ways so that we can achieve the graduate profile for our students. The next principle is we really want to engage with the community in a different way. We want to sort of have community be part of the decision making, of the thought process that helps us get to the very best outcomes. And so built into our process of the bond is a bond accountability committee, which is an independent panel of community members who have expertise in various fields, and they are really charged with reporting to our school board on sort of how well PPS delivers on our voter approved projects. But we also want to really invite folks in venues such as this town hall and more in focus groups where we're getting the experience, the expertise of our students, of our educators, of our community members, so that we can have a really strong program. And then our last principle is that we really believe in independent professional oversight and accountability. As stewards of such a significant public resource, we want to make sure that we are performing to our maximum, that we are thinking about impact, and that we are accountable not only to the Bond Accountability Committee and the school board, but to our larger community and public of which these funds come from. So I think the next slide.
Now more than ever, engagement with students and families is critical to learn priorities for the 2020 bond, especially our Black and Native families. Outside this town hall, we will hear from students and families through a community-wide survey, focus group, and public meetings. Next slide, please. Thanks to voters, the district has passed 2 large capital improvement bonds in the last handful of years, first in 2012 and in 2017. These bonds have allowed us to accelerate many of the important improvements within the district, including full modernizations of Roosevelt, Franklin, and Grant High School, and a newly constructed Fabian Pre-K 8. Madison High School is under construction right now and is on schedule to be open in fall of 2021, as is the new Kellogg Middle School that will open next year as well. Lincoln High School continues into construction and will be growing very much more vertical here in the coming months, and design on the Benson Polytech High School continues as well. Next slide, please. In addition to our larger projects, we have done lots and lots of work in our more targeted areas, including security upgrades that are continuing to go on. We replace 4 to 5 roofs every summer. We're focusing on critical areas such as asbestos abatement and lead paint remediation within all of our schools. We have updated fire alarms and sprinkler systems and continue with accessibility, seismic improvements, and have completed science lab upgrades at our middle school. Next slide, please. An important note is that the options that we are looking towards for 2020 will be a renewal of the current tax rate. We're not looking to increase that rate over what is currently in place. Next slide, please.
Sorry. So when we think about the proposed investments, we want to make sure that folks know that we have some options. So there are educational investments. We can utilize funding to support items like curriculum or special education classrooms and technology infrastructure. Another is the health and safety projects. So we think about how we can improve on deferred maintenance on some of the critical life cycles of buildings to ensure that they are up to upkept and moving and sort of helping to make sure that that folks are safe. And these include improvements such as new roofs, upgrades to mechanical systems, seismic upgrades to sort of to prepare in case of earthquakes, increased security systems to promote safety for students and educators, and also greater accessibility for folks who are experiencing disabilities. And then we also have the option of modernizations and rebuilds, similar to what we've seen. And so there are a couple of options in looking at completion of the Benson campus that includes the multiple pathways for graduation building, also rebuilding and planning for our high schools, Cleveland, Jefferson, and Wilson. So the next slide is going to tell us where we're going. So we're going to break out into breakout rooms, and we're going to ask folks to go into 4 groups, and you will be able to sort of travel after each group. So between 6:30 and 7. Oops, sorry. I think we might have skipped a slide about the breakout groups, but that's okay. Well, so we're going to go into a breakout group for educational investments, health and safety projects, thank you, modernizations and rebuilds, and then also the bond options. And you'll be facilitated and join a conversation. There'll be 3 half-hour sessions, and so you'll be able to travel to amongst those things, and you should have links to those. And I think I skipped a slide, so I'm sorry, Roseanne, if you wouldn't mind going to the slide before, which is sort of how to stay engaged. So if you wouldn't mind, we would love for if you are not able to get everything out or to be able to say everything that you need to say in the discussion group, that there are still more ways to provide feedback. One is our survey, and we're hoping that to hold that survey open until July 3rd at 5 p.m. and there's a link to that. There's also, you can email us at schoolbond@pps.net. And then we want to let folks know that in terms of next steps, there will be a work session on July 9th at 6 p.m. For the Board of Education to discuss community input. There will be another meeting to be determined in July. We'll have a public hearing on the final bond option as folks get closer to a decision. And then on July 28th, there will be a board meeting on a vote to refer a final bond renewal option to voters. And that's still tentative, but we think that will happen. And then on November 3rd is election day, when voters, if the bond is referred, voters will have an option to vote for that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to ask folks to, hopefully you've been invited to a breakout session and you have those links. We're going to ask folks to travel to your breakout session, and then we will begin shortly. And for the next between 6:30 and 7, we have about 5 minutes to transition. Between 6:30 and 7, we'll begin the discussions, and then you can travel to breakout 2, which is 7 p.m. to 7:30, and then our breakout 3, which is 7:30 to 8, which gives us about a half hour for each one. I want to thank everyone for your participation and for your engagement. I know, speaking on behalf of our Board of Education, our superintendent, and all of the staff who are here, we're really excited to hear your thoughts and your inputs, and really just thankful for the opportunity to serve as thought partners with you. And we're really excited to listen. So thank you. And I think I'm going to invite you all to go to your breakout sessions now. Thank you.